I guess we start. Welcome. Thank you for joining. I don't think I need to introduce myself in the sense that if you are interested enough, of course, you can look at my Google or website or the modern ways of finding out all about that I'm barking mad. My name's Lara Morgan. I've been invited by WeConnect to talk about culture and the business world. And as there's a reasonably small audience, I think we'll just get straight into it and then perhaps do some Q&A, which I believe will be moderated. And please ask questions and engage, because I can't say that I'm culturally trained. I can't say that I'm professionally trained. In fact, I didn't go to university, but I always felt the luck of starting a business when you're very young is actually you better be nice to a lot of people because you're going to need a lot of help. And fortunately, I was brought up in an environment where you value people and their skills. And in doing that, I think you have a very good foundation to know that if you can build a team around you with that team and with the value that they bring to your business, you have the chance to grow. What I think too often I find is that the maverick entrepreneur is also, frankly, a benevolent dictator, isn't very good at letting go, is very poor at admitting when they're wrong, doesn't have a genuine desire sometimes to keep learning and growing. And the idea of feedback, which is another professional way of saying perhaps criticism or challenge, doesn't actually work in terms of characteristically whether that individual is willing to take correction like a child. And in fact, they continue behaving like an undisciplined child through their adult life, which actually does not serve them well. I've invested in one like that. So actually, I think that culture has to come from the top. It has to be leadership. And if it's not at the top, then there's a much bigger problem. You cannot expect people to follow you in whatever format you are and whatever, as I say, the maverick you are. Because actually at the beginning of the business, you really need an all hands on deck attitude. But actually, why should you expect other people to lift boxes if you two are not prepared to lift boxes? So I've talked about from boring and back again, because I think there is a stage at which also you can have fun with culture, but you also have to put in the process and the structure. And I think that there is a requirement, for want of a better description, to lead by example, get your hands dirty. You don't need your own car park. You shouldn't treat yourself as anything special. And so I think that demonstration of you behaving, you live the culture and that you breathe the culture is as important first stage. So you have to look at yourself and go, actually, how consistent am I? How fair am I? Do I understand precedents? If I understand precedents, do I live by precedents? Do I live by fairness? Am I reasonable? And do I appreciate that whatever standard I set, I may have to, frankly, live and die by the standard I set? So if I give one person a specific approach to maternity leave, then everybody else has to have the same standard. So you're setting precedents. The object, says she, hoping to move down the page, that we stuck, but we'll get there, of culture is to engage, to stimulate, to learn and empower, and actually also to underpin your strategy. So you've got to spend time with people. It's not always easy. It depends how big your company is. But the idea that culture is, I guess, described kind of within the combined vision and the mission of the business, because I think people should join a business with a clear understanding of what that purpose is. That is the beginning of the process in terms of you've got to recruit for those that are going to culturally fit the endeavor, the attitude, the intention, and the drive of the company that you are excited to be leading and growing. And you should employ for the people that actually relate to the service proposition or the product. And that's not just around skill set, that's, their attitude to life, their desire to work at a particular pace. So I think to start off with is, I'm not traditional in my recruitment methodology. I'm very untraditional. Initially, first of all, I really want to see the spark in someone's eyes, and it's all about attitude. I assume at the application phase, we've already weeded out an awful lot of those, and mostly those that don't have the skill set. But then the really big dividers in our approach to how you build great teams is those that are going to respond in a way to the kind of environment that is required in the business as it evolves and as you are leading it, and your expectations with regard to flexibility, agility, the desire to grow and learn, to share, to be agile in the job approach, to frankly be uncomfortable and outside the comfort zone, never to stand still, always wishing to learn. And I employ on the basis that here's the challenge I'm going to set you. And by the way, if you don't like the challenge, don't join my business. So it's not a standstill organization. I don't like hierarchy. I recently made a horrible mistake where I employed somebody believing that they understood the enterprise way, but they're so hierarchical and controlling that it's impossible to work at that pace because I can't afford a middleman. I can't afford someone slowing down the stimulus of the business. So here I talk about, the recruitment phase, literally interviewing so that people can demonstrate the agility and their desire to be in an enterprise culture, and asking questions around perhaps how someone would behave in a given situation. So maybe, you're at an event, you might be in HR or PR or something that isn't sales, but actually somebody's not turned up, and do you get your hands dirty and start trying to sell? Well, give me an example of the way you've been outside your comfort zone and had to triumph, and how did you enjoy that? And did you find it interesting? So I think that kind of stimulus in the interview process to try and underpin, this is what we mean by culture, because not every culture is the same, Patagonia says on Black Friday, I think, let my team go surfing. I'm not a surf brand in this business, but I have a surf brand and they do exactly the same. So I think that's just an interesting way. I think the other thing is that to underpin a culture, and again, depending on the size of the business, you need to employ at the outset the roles, as in the skill set, the descriptor and the title. And some people do find titles very important. I personally think they have some asset use, but I'm not really interested in titles. I'm interested in great people. But very, very honestly, is that role description should be linked to key performance indicators, which of course sometimes get muddled, and in small businesses it's overwhelming and there's too many indicators, but we try and keep narrowing and professionalizing. And that's when structure and strategy really are underpinned. But, in an early day enterprising growth business, you need those flexibilities for people to go, I can go outside my role description, but nevertheless, I basically understand what my purpose is, what my contribution is, and how I will be measured. And the reason for this slide is ultimately I went on a business course 9-10 years into my business, which was a basically soap sales company. We sold miniature soaps and luxury bars of toiletries, bottles to hotels, and products like bathrobes and slippers, which everybody fortunately loves. But we set a role description, we set key performance indicators, we sat down, we did what some people call appraisals, but they should be key career development reviews. And it's about seeing an individual develop. And then ultimately, all of those goals are attached to a reward mechanism that is a bonus as the business starts to perform, that says, if we sell X, we get Y. We share in the fruits of our labor as a group of people. And this slide says that at one stage I was mad enough to take many people, first of all, to the Caribbean, and then I think 2 years later we took 158 people to Egypt as well. I never intended to get in the papers, and I remember after that, people said, what have you done? And I'm like, well, I've just rewarded my team for achieving outstanding results. And that tends to make people think twice, because most leaders will reward based on outstanding results, and why shouldn't you share that reward? in culture, things are going to go wrong. So things outside your control. During the running of my business, we dealt with SARS, we dealt with foot and mouth, we dealt with Osama bin Laden and September the 11th, bringing calamity to the hospitality industry. You know, the enormity of the endless challenges in enterprise that are outside your control, like this annoying container. And I did have a container load drop into the water off a boat in the Suez Canal with a very urgent product in it, which made my biggest customer very angry. These are outside of your control, but this is where culture can absolutely be the making of you, and you have to again lead. So I don't like the day, but I remember the day distinctly when I called the customer and I said, I'm going to tell you exactly what's happened. You're probably not going to believe me because I almost don't believe me, but your container load is sitting in the bottom of the Suez Canal, and I'm now going to do everything I can to rescue the situation. But the sooner you can underpin the values of the way you behave, the sooner others will behave similarly. So if you say within your perhaps 5 values that you're going to praise somebody each day and you're going to say, well done, or you're going to educate and learn and progressively grow, you've got to look for excuses and reasons to demonstrate that and bring people with you. And that is, frankly, sometimes relentlessly hard work because you're always looking after others. And actually, the real upside of it is you see people grow, you see them flourish, you see them bring better ideas. Usually, most of my team have better ideas than I do, and it's good to listen. But unless you have an open culture where the conversation about it's okay to make mistakes just as long as you're trying. You know, as long as somebody can reasonably describe that they were doing something in good faith, I have no reason to complain. In fact, I would suggest that it's a wise thing to celebrate the opportunity of them doing a good job to help us grow the business, even though it might not have gone the way we would like to have it planned, if you see what I mean. So you have to, within culture, accept the heydays and the high days, as well as the not so calm days. Ironically, the other thing is, I think to build a good culture, you're great people that are going to work harder than others. They're going to be more creative. They're going to bring the extra mile of effort. I think you need to be aware that within the cultural landscape, you know, particularly in the enterprise environment, you know, saying at, I don't know, 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon to the management team, good news, you get to stay to the very end of the day and you're now customer service, and letting off everybody else because it's a sunny day is extremely powerful. Now, that might be also, we used to go to the park and get the ice cream van to come and drive around to our place. We used to do endless things. We had an extraordinary cake maker, and we used to run, you know, Halloween cake making competitions, and frankly, any excuse for a party or some kind of celebration. We had a dressing up day, and actually one of my staff dressed up so well, she was mistaken for an old lady in the car park by another member of the staff. And it just makes me laugh when I reflect on the fact that despite growing Britain's 57th fastest ever growing independent company, I had a team of people that managed to make time for fun and for music, always for cake and always for chocolate. But we also had an international organization, and the care that we took to engage China and engage the Czech Republic, and this is very important, but to be happy, you have to be authentic and genuine. And I'm absolutely rubbish at a lot of things, including remembering birthdays. So you then have to put in structures and you have to put in effort. I've got a 21-year-old whose birthday is this weekend, and, you know, there's no point giving that 21-year-old a bunch of flowers if she doesn't like flowers. So my question to you is have you actually and genuinely thought ahead about not what you'd like to give somebody, but what somebody would like to receive? You only make somebody happy if you understand what their aims and goals are, and their personal aims and goals and their life goals. You can't assume, for example, everyone likes flowers. In fact, in my case, my PA specifically told me she'd rather have a bottle of gin with a straw And so she got a bottle of gin with a straw. And frankly, if you knew me better, you'd understand why. So the be happy points of duvet days, the flexibility around letting parents go and see children's nativity plays, which is always contentious in some organizations that don't understand that those things add value. I mean, I heard an organization have a complaint about, in the days when more people smoked, the non-smokers saying that they felt it was unfair that the smokers got all the breaks. So we had an interesting facilitated exchange where the smokers explained that whilst they were smoking, they weren't talking about their holidays, they were actually talking about the business. And actually, sometimes those things of mixing different departments up can be very helpful. But I would also say that, you know, culture is both a gifting and rewarding thing, but it can be a physical thing. So in our business, we used to, the first thing a new member of staff had to do, and it didn't matter whether you were in sales, admin, customer service, finance, I don't care what department you're in, you used to go and be slave for a day with the executive housekeeper of one of our company targets or one of our company customers in a hotel environment. You would be literally changing beds with a housekeeper, learning how the front end, if you like, the sharp end, the industry end of our business operated. When a person came back from changing 15 or 16 hotel bedrooms a day, you can imagine how much they understood more about the business of us supplying luxury branded toiletries to hotels, and how much they also understood how seriously we respected that housekeeper who was engaged doing the job whilst juggling the delivery for the soap and the shampoo and all the products that we used to. Interestingly, I think that culture can also, and this is the connector to the next slide. So I today have 7 companies, and I just thought I'd pick out an example of also the cultural impact and strength that others outside a business can bring to you. So for example, we'll start with an amazing brand called Yogi Bear. I have a young woman that I've invested in, and she has literally zero financial competency and awareness. And that's a challenge. So I have to bring an outside independent accountant that I've asked her to go find by asking friends and family that she trusts. So I'm not the influencer of the person that's going to hold her hand, to come into a situation where he can teach her the finances, so that in effect there is an arm's length trust where she can bring in someone independent. And culturally, the reflection on me is I have nothing to hide. So bring in an independent, because we're going to work together, but you need to take responsibility for your finances, because there is not a business in the world that can be led really well by a leader when they are abdicating the responsibility for the financial management of their business. On the bottom left of the screen, you'll see Global Amenities, which is a company that supplies remarkable ideas, products to hotels again. And here is a situation where 26 years after I met him, I have used the same lawyer to set up the shareholding agreement of this business. 26 years on from when I first met him, the same person is my lawyer. Now, there's a huge amount of benefits to that, not least he knows that I'm barking mad, but also that he understands my industry, that he understands brand licensing. We don't have to go through all the same learnings again. So the consistency within my culture of respecting those that I respect as professionals and looking after them and considering them to be as part of my team. My question to you is, you know, how good is your lawyer? How good is your accountant? And in fact, how good is your banker? Because you need a bank relationship in business, whether or not you're massively financed. You can't take money in forever, and you need a financial backstop with a bank. And the more you communicate to your bank the culture, the ambition, the performance, the better the relationship will be. In the top of the screen, you have Dry Rope, which is an investment in an amazing change robe for triathletes and outdoor athletes, obstacle course races. But the point of the Dry Rope conversation in my culture is I am using a Chinese supply chain and my Chinese office that I employed 20 years ago as my sourcing, quality control agent, and production expert. And frankly, without the team's expertise in China that I'm privileged to work with, I wouldn't be where I am today. But I think there's a fantastic story where I happen to know that the husband of the person that works for me is a massive particular team. They don't really play football very well, but they're Manchester United, and I don't support them, but her husband supports them. So I go out of my way to send him and her a Manchester United football shirt, soccer shirt for the Americans. And I know that that soccer shirt gives me return on investment like you cannot calculate. So perhaps I'm manipulative in my culture, but I don't think so. I think it's caring, because I bothered to ask whether they supported a football team from China, and they happen to support Manchester United. I think the other thing is that culture will sometimes let you down. I've had an extraordinary situation recently where people can surprise you. And one of the things to learn in culture is that if you've got a bad egg, and in this case, somebody who I still deeply respect, I think let the business get away from them, I've had to remove them from the operating of the business. And Kiprix is an example where people change, circumstances change, and industry changes. And when times are tough, culture can underpin your survival. So in 2003, I had to let go of 221 people, 137 people out of 417. So a third of my team around the world. And we rigorously had to manage the skill set that was going to be required in 9 different international offices. And without being anything other than consistent in the way we measured people's skill sets, we managed to reduce the team by a third and continue growing. I can't say happily because it was really hard work, but we also asked that team of people to take 4 days pay for 5 days work for a period of 6 months, whilst after September the 11th and the challenges of that period, we had no other way of paying those bills. And of course, after 6 months, I paid those people back because we were in a position to do so. But to put somebody in a position where they're taking 20% less income and working probably harder won't happen if you haven't given the flexibility, given the education, invested in the person, given them challenges, and believed that they are part of your family of business. There is no way that would have happened. Not last, but very importantly, I have a little investment called Gate 8 Luggage, and I just think this is a lovely story about culture. So a friend of mine I go cycling with used to be HR director for Sainsbury's, and I met her yesterday by pure chance in another shop environment where we're licensing a brand. Lo and behold, because your people represent your brand in all sorts of environments and you're not always there, she said to me, you work with Alistair, don't you? Alistair Callender. And I said, yes, I do. He owns Gate 8. And she said, Lara, he did a fantastic job at our awards night. And this is the new HR director for EasyJet, who are a mega airline. And you just know when you've got a great partner and a great product that if you have a strong culture, your people go the extra mile and they do a great job. So the idea that investing in culture is anything other than good time well spent, and Jack Welch in his book on winning suggested that he spent, if I'm not wrong, 40% of his working week always on culture, which I'm not doing well enough yet. Well enough at the moment, we're all working on it. That's extraordinary, but people remember good people, and it becomes catching and infectious, and actually it may sell you product. Finally, on the top right, we have Scentered. I don't know if you can see Scentered, my fragrance brand, but I think the other part of culture is every now and again you have to have a intuitive feel about your staff, your team, your atmosphere, the momentum and the excitement, and that comes through communication, and it gets harder and harder. And I think that culture is underpinned by good communication, where people know who's on what bus, who's doing what. And we've had, huge disruption in Scentered because it's growing quickly, and we've got change happening, and we're growing in international countries, and we've got challenges around how the growth happens and the different languages in the business. And again, people will cover for people when you have a great culture. They'll step up and not drop the ball. And I've been astounded by my Scentered team, and how actually this morning I had to say to somebody, butt out, because we can see that there are 5 people trying to catch the same ball, and we've gone sort of slightly to the other way. And we've got to give people a chance to focus on their roles. And that's my poor communication. That means that I haven't updated everybody to say who's doing what, but it is a changing feast. So the next picture is really just sort of a comment about culture can't be cold, it can't be uncomfortable, it can't be miserable, and you have to bring people into the warmth, and it sometimes can be stormy, but it is really good fun. I also say, and if you look at the next picture, is culture comes in every shape and size. Not everybody likes the same colors, as I say, and sometimes there will be a kind of rocky period because the business is under pressure or finance is tight. And I think, your goodwill, your energy, your self-care, but also your determination to be consistent will get you through. But don't expect to employ clones, because good businesses come within a culture with an understanding that everybody's different. So the example here wasn't what I was looking for as a picture, but I had a member of my finance team who was world-class meticulous at Excel, and she used to internally teach all the other people how to do Excel, because Carol used to spend her weekends balancing her own personal finances to within a penny. When somebody does that, you know that they are rigorous about money. And that's the person you want in your finance team, and it's also the person you want teaching Excel. So there is a point here, which is you can gain huge assets from great people when you maximize the cultural value of the skill sets that they bring and treat people as individuals. So in this case, somebody might like red. Not everybody has to have black. But again, there has to be a respect for the brand. So there's a balance to be found, but in the pursuit of happiness, don't fail to realize there are huge assets that come from good culture, because the cost of training in-house is a lot less than the cost of training out-house. The other thing that I think is really interesting is that if you're a global business, an international business, and you're loving business, then try and expose your people to as many experiences. Try and get them to travel, try and get them to meet each other, try and get them to celebrate with each other. I don't think you need a wacko camp where everybody is doing the same thing. And in fact, in the gig economy, that's nearly impossible. So I would say, actually, the other traveling is sometimes just make damn sure you get together enough in a timely way to make it fun, to share ideas, because actually some people who are not necessarily what you would consider the innovators or the marketeers, sometimes they are absolutely bursting with great ideas to improve your business. And again, that's conversation, that's communication, and those things underpin good culture. So I'm going to summarize, because I don't think we need to do this for too long. And if there are any questions, then we'll dip into that. But, I do believe if you don't ask, you don't get, and you should literally expect the world from your staff and recruit on that basis. I think you need to be bold, be different. It's going to take bravery to manage and lead people and to run a great culture, and you're going to have rocky times. But if you stick with fairness and consistency, and you behave well, and you're willing to move boxes yourself, and frankly, you don't need your own car park. And I traveled in economy for years, 17 of them, until I sold that business. Still travel in economy. It takes some bravery, it takes some discomfort on your behalf, but lead by example. Surround yourself with the great people that you recruit, and then expect the world of them as well. But make it clear that when they come in, you expect A-grade behavior. Admit when you are wrong, be humble. So also one of the great great momentum in the culture is find ways of getting new salespeople orders that they can own, because it gets them off to a head start and people will celebrate with them. Don't forget to link the role description to the key performance indicators to the rewards mechanism, and then to celebrate really loudly. But you are not going to have all the same characters in a business. Don't give flowers to someone who doesn't like flowers. And never forget that most of the time your team will have better ideas than you do. So that's why you employed them. Make the most of them. And I think most of all, look after your own personal health, because you can't lead and you can't be energized and you can't be infectious with the pride of what you do if you're not well yourself. And on that note, happy to take questions, but I'm not sure you have volume. What's the story?
Hi, Lara. This is Carle. I'm here, and actually, I do have a couple of questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Great.
Okay, great. To our audience, apologies. We had some technical difficulties as we got the webinar started, but Lara, that was an amazing presentation. It's so good to hear about your different experiences, and I love that you told stories and really provided input through those experiences. That's where a lot of people can gain value. And I wanted to start by asking a question and also letting our audience know that there is a box where you can insert your questions. Feel free to put any there. I'll go ahead and get us started, though. So you spend a lot of your time, having to run the actual business. I'm wondering how you prioritize culture as a part of that, because with the businesses that you're running, your time could be allocated to other things. So how do you explain that to your leadership and to your companies so that they all know that this is a priority for you?
So I think, first of all, I'm in a very different role today than when I ran a global business that, I built, and I saw international offices grow because I opened them. And, we have factories in China and the Czech Republic, and I'm very lucky. I speak a number of languages, but I don't speak them all. Today, I'm an investor in businesses. I bring general managers in, and I don't day-to-day want to run generally the running of the day-to-day business. So ultimately, when I employ the leader, I am massively sense checking that that leader, who I may never have met in my life before, most of the time I've never met in my life before, in fact, all of the time nearly, shares my values, understands the purpose, and buys into the vision of the business. And that's literally just starter for one. And actually, I've just been dancing, for want of a better description, since October last year with a president that I just put in America to run Scentered, who is a scary, world-class, talented, really awesome professional businesswoman. And therefore, what I'm saying to you is, I think we've met in 3 different countries over the period of 12 months to get to know each other, so that I could sense and become comfortable with the fact that she's going to be running my baby, so to speak. She's got a big job. She's horribly expensive. Is she going to be worth it? Well, that comes down to the caliber of how you interview, and also seeing how she demonstrated herself. So I got her here for a day with my team to see how she behaved in the environment, and every signal she gave, the way she worked with them, her humility, challenging on targets, understanding the conversation, admitting that she couldn't speak English because she's American, and that's meant to be, a fun comment, but there is a seriousness about it, which is actually, that is an international exchange business, and she has to be sympathetic to, we've got different laws of the land when it comes to employment, and there are going to be lessons she learns. Is she open to lessons? I even set situations up where I want to know how well she takes correction, or when I just say, that is not happening, how does she behave? And I do all of that in a very senior role, taking a lot of time, because strategically I have time in this environment and I have to get that role right. So the time and the effort to employ the right person pays you back dividends, because when they start, in fact, they tend to start early, they tend to start when they hit the ground, they're running, and your payback is vast. So in that business, that happens. I have a customer service division, and frankly, we cheat the system. We've got an alarm system on the customer care phone that reminds us whose birthday's in a week, and we have a series of envelopes. On a Friday or a Monday, I sign birthday cards for the different people in the different businesses, and we try and do that but right. And obviously at a different size of company, a different, a generosity occurs, but you can do small things as well, and small things might seem like big things. I'm sitting with one of my team in the room who's just come back on the bargain economy experience of Norwegian Airlines, but she got to go to New York for a week. And I'm optimistic that that will create some sort of halo effect, other than the fact that she's knackered. But she shared the experience of sitting in some very senior agency presentations and has added huge value. And I hope that experience makes her think, you know what, this is a different kind of company where my role is respected. So I think there's a million ways in which you can embed culture, both your own leadership and inclusion, so shadowing, sharing, taking people to meetings, but also by just testing that when the leadership are coming in, they understand that this is an empirical part of what they grow and protect. Because, genuinely, when Dry Robe says to its people on a Black Friday, let my people go surfing, we don't sell goods on that day unless it's an e-commerce order and it just flows. We have no publicity around it. But actually, can you imagine the loyalty when they go down the beach, or they go for a walk with a family, or they get to do Christmas shopping? They come back on Monday having had a 3-day weekend when, frankly, there's Thanksgiving anyway. It's an entire winning proposition for that business within its cultural message. Yogi Bear, my yoga company, it doesn't celebrate, doesn't commercialize, because it's not within our authentic nature. Whereas, candidly, Kitbricks is a hardcore, outdoor bag business. Our culture is, we want robust, we want assertive, we want, outdoor lifestyle. So, yeah, we discount on Black Friday. So, your cultural behavior should link to your commercial behavior, because that underpins the community that you build. I hope that makes sense.
No, it really does, and I thank you for giving us a number of different examples on how you've worked in culture and how you've made that a priority. You also mentioned things about interviewing, different maybe hard skills that you might see as a priority. Wondered if maybe you might elaborate on some of those on a more basic level for some of our maybe younger companies that are looking to expand and really trying to hone in on how to bring in the most effective person for whatever leadership role, and or if it's a junior role, you still need people that are going to believe in what. So any insight you can provide there, I think, would be really helpful for some of our listeners.
I mean, let's be under no illusion, the business of one is a hobby, and it's a consultancy. But actually, if you want to grow a really big business and have an asset, you're going to need great people. And spending some time to get the recruitment play right is painful, but deeply rewarding if you get it right. And you can laugh a lot, and sometimes you can cry a bit too, because you can share great things, and that's happy tears as well as life tears. And so recruitment questions that I ask are things around how people earned their money and saved their money when they were children, because that tells me characteristically what kind of upbringing they had, and did they get their hands dirty and work at the dog kennel or in 7-Eleven like I did, or in McDonald's, and can they tell me the story of having to learn the ingredients of a two-all beef patty special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickled onion, and a sesame seed bun, which you need to say within 15 seconds to get free chips, fries. So, genuinely, I want to try and engage the human being, but I'm testing at those points. Did you really do it? And what was the experience you took away from that? And it's so within recruitment, the why. Why did you do that? Why did you do that next? What happened next? Really drilling into it. Is this something somebody owned, or is this something that they made up because they're interview trained? That becomes quite a skill. I think also that there's an important fairness. We've just been recruiting an agency in America. So the first thing I did is set up a chart of 5 key questions. And at the top of the list was the word chemistry. So do you have a chemistry with this person? can you spend the next 48 hours flying to flipping Australia with them sitting next door to you? And is it going to be an enjoyable situation? Because you are going to spend a lot of time with work colleagues, particularly in enterprise. I mean, I remember painfully my first recruit, and I was even interviewed by her father because I was 25 years old and she was 21. And I think he was more concerned probably about me being a complete fly-by-night. But that was judging, and he was a banker and he was a bit, stable. But, I think it's as important for the entrepreneur and the owner of the business to sell their vision and their purpose, to get the reaction from the person they're interviewing, to really see whether there's a synergy and a genuine connection. I'm very sad. I recently let go of a marketing director because we can't afford her at the moment in one of the companies. But there was no question about her desire and her synergy to relate to the wellness product that we have. And so it doesn't always work out, even when you're rigorous. This is not a perfect art. I hope that, and I assure you, time and time again, I see entrepreneurial businesses carrying partners and people when they should have let them go much sooner.
Sure. Yeah, those are all, I think, great insights for our listeners. I've gotten a question here. I'm just going to read it off. It says, creating culture isn't always organic, because it sounds like you've actually been very intentional about creating a creative culture in your workplace.
Yeah.
Is there another part of the organization that needs to be in place structurally, aside from the people and the idea?
So interestingly, I don't have a lot of experience in this area, but I think that if you're in a scaled organization and you've got a culture challenge, or you're needing to make a culture change, or there's a significant change in the strategic intent of the business, I think you need to get everybody in a room, and I think you need to talk to them. And then I think you need a sort of a plan. And actually, I'm delivering this effort, hopefully, to a major organization in Britain because I'm passionate about what they do. And, they need to be culturally embedded instead of sort of working in silos. So I would suggest those things, and I would suggest visual things like notices on the kitchen board, staff events, have a dragon boat race, make a team event happen, have a Christmas fair, find an excuse to do a mud run, get everybody physically and mentally engaged. We used to do something called the auction of promises, which was basically selling off staff skills and time. The money all went to charity, but the riot of knowing that Nino made the best lasagna in Bedfordshire and I used to buy it for an outrageous price, or that somebody would borrow my sports car and love it, but never been able to afford it any other way, that's really cool. So I think if you're a big organization, I hope that contributes in some way, but I'm not equipped, or I don't have the experience, but that's the way I'd go about it. And I'd be brutally open. I don't believe in, side meetings, and I would absolutely make clear the rules around the nonsense that corporates waste, worried about hierarchy and all of that rubbish.
Okay, great. Thank you for all of your responses and for your presentation today, Lara. It's really great to be able to hear from you. I know that you recently presented, or were on a panel with WeConnect as well, and we always appreciate your feedback, your insight, your advice. I think that a lot of up and coming and smaller companies within our network are gaining a lot of experience even from hearing from yours. Thank you so much for your presentation today. We've covered all the questions that we have. If there's anything additional you'd like to add, we have a couple of minutes. If not, then I can go ahead and close it off, or I can leave a closing remark for you if you'd like to close it up.
No, I mean, all I would say to you is that I think there is an intuitiveness about culture. So go with your gut. I mean, we have a thing called Team Brief, which is every week in one of my companies, and it hasn't been working well because of this huge change. And you just have to keep turning up, and you just have to keep communicating, and you just have to be open with everybody that it is a tough time, and you will always get through it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice to live by, especially in an organization that is growing, in companies that are also growing and looking for the next opportunity. So thank you again for your time.
No problem.
And I want to remind our attendees that this session has been recorded and will be up on the WeConnect YouTube channel, which you can access via our website under WeConnect Academy. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Lara, again, and we look forward to the next webinar session.